Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly, a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube, brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. I'm your host, John. It's episode 51, and we've got a whole new week of Boston Bruins action to talk about. Some of it very good, and, well, if you know what happened last night, some of it very not good. But we're going to get into it all here, talk about this past week, look ahead to the upcoming week, and just talk about this team, where they're at right now, and the Boston Bruins in general. So as you can see, back again. He's basically my co-host now. We've got Danny back on the stream. Danny, what's going on, man? Welcome in, and thank you so much for coming on to talk Bruins hockey again.
It's good to be back, and it's crazy. What do you say, episode 51?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing episode 1 with you, so
Yep.
it's great to be back and be on the 51st episode.
Yeah, man, definitely. So, before we get started, I do want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. I can't thank them enough for all of their support and allowing this to happen and giving us the platform to talk some hockey. And also want to point your attention down to the links in the description of the video. If you are in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any team, or NCAA college apparel, there are 3 links down in the description of the video. Some great products, all different kinds of things to choose from, whether it's the normal stuff like hats and shirts and jerseys and that, but also some really cool accessories as well, and a lot of different stuff that you can pick through with all different team brandings on it. And it would really mean a lot and help out a lot if you could check out those links in the description if you are in the market for any of those things. But thank you guys so much for that, and let's get right into it now. Danny, I guess we'll start. Tuka Rask, obviously last week we talked about him signing, but we recorded the show before he ever played a game. So over this past week, we've gotten to see Tuka back in the net, and it was certainly a tale of 2 very different games for Rask in his 2 starts so far. First, we had against Philadelphia, his first game back. Last Thursday, he played well, only gave up 2 goals, picked up the win as the Bruins beat the Flyers 3-2, and then last night was just a debacle for everybody. It certainly wasn't just Tuukka's fault. I mean, that whole team. We'll get into, when we do the review of the last week, we'll get more in depth about last night, but it was just an absolute disaster. Tuukka ended up giving up 5 goals in the first period and getting pulled. But again, I don't think it was all on him. He certainly could have been better, but I think every single player in the Boston lineup needed to be better last night. So just overall, it's just kind of a small sample size. He's only played a couple games, but just, what have you seen from Rask, and what are you expecting going forward?
You asked me what have I seen from Rask, and it's very hard for me to judge right now, only because the games that we've seen have been performances on complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
I guess maybe we can kind of get into the last week here, because the game against Philadelphia, first game since June 6th, I thought he performed really well. He didn't face a lot of shots, but, Philadelphia is going to make you work to get saves. They drive to the net. They are gritty. They never give up. They play 100%, and Rask was able to weather the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he played really well. He looked calm in net, and he was able to hold things down for the Bruins, because, the Flyers, like I said, do not make things easy. Last night, I mean, that was a completely different story. But like you said, I don't think it was all on Rask. However, he is going to be the one, that shows up in the box score.
Yeah.
And so, incomplete right now for this first week. I would love to see more of what I saw last Thursday rather than what I saw last night.
Definitely, yeah. again, I think it's really, you can't really judge him yet because we
Yeah.
just haven't seen enough, and we don't know what he's going to look like 2-3 months from now. I will say it was kind of encouraging to see him play so well in his first game against Philadelphia. Because I think, heading into that game, he was such a question mark. We just had no idea really what to expect. He hadn't played a game, in months since last June when they lost in the playoffs, and obviously had the offseason surgery, and that became, that adds to the questions about him, is his overall health, and how is he going to be able to recover from this surgery? Is he going to come back and still be the same goaltender? Because a lot of times with goalies, especially when you get into major surgeries, they're never the same. And
Yeah.
we've seen that with multiple goaltenders throughout their recent history of the NHL, where they have a major hip surgery or they have a major back surgery or just some sort of major medical procedure, and they're just never the same. Corey Schneider comes to mind for
Yeah.
me. Who was a great goaltender with the New Jersey Devils for a number of years. Even when the Devils weren't that great, he was really, really good in net. And then he ran into hip problems, had to have
Yep.
major surgery, and was never the same again. Eventually got bought out, got sent to the AHL, and he's now playing in Bridgeport in the AHL. And, just that's having, those hip problems ruined his career essentially and pretty much ended his NHL career. And I think I had a lot of questions about how Rask was going to be able to come back from a major surgery and how he was going to perform, especially after such a long time without playing. But I was definitely impressed, and I think it was a good sign to see him play so well in his first game back.
I do too, but the one caveat I will say with this was that Philadelphia did not, in Rask's first game back, did not get a ton of shots
Yeah,
on the net. I believe they only had 6 shots in the first period. So
yeah,
while it was good to see him have a good game, I would like to see, in that Philadelphia game in particular, there was not a lot of shots thrown his way. I thought the Bruins played well defensively, which is hard to believe given the debacle last night.
yeah,
But or sorry, Tuesday night. We're recording this on Wednesday,
yeah.
but um, you know, I really thought that Thursday was a good sign of, getting that first start out of the way, getting, his feet back in front of him and getting a win, because that could certainly, affect his mental psyche if he performs poorly coming off his first start. And I could definitely say that that would bother me too if I started off on the wrong foot, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. So again, like overall, I think overall it's just not a big enough sample size yet to make any true judgment on Tuka Rask
I agree.
and how he's played so far because we've only seen a couple of games. They were polar opposite games. Philadelphia stinks, so them. It was obviously great to see him play well, only give up 2 goals and get the win, and he made 25 saves, but Philadelphia is not good this year. So, and then he plays a really good team in Carolina, who we'll talk about this game in a little bit, and gets absolutely destroyed and, ends up, get only lasting 1 period. But again, I think we're going to need to see a lot more before we can make an accurate judgment on Rask at this point.
I agree. And but the good thing I think about having these two games being polar opposites is that we can more fairly judge him down the road. We've seen him have a pretty good game and we've seen him have a very bad game. And now that we know, both ends of the spectrum, I think that will give us more of a clear evaluation sort of measuring stick
Yep.
moving forward, especially as it gets closer to the playoffs. Then we can start to say, okay, he's coming into his own. He's going to be really good. Or maybe it's time to panic about the Bruins' options at goaltender for the playoffs.
So one last thing before we move on here. Thursday night against Washington, who do you think starts in goal for the Bruins? Do you think they give Ullmark the start, or do you think they try and go back to Rask and get him back on track to what they are, hoping that he can be
Ooh, that's a good question. I would honestly, I would think they would go back to Rask because clearly they want to show that they still believe in him and he's
Mhm.
still part of the team. Obviously, Allmark as a fan, I would go back to Allmark, but um, they want to be able to work Tuka Rask into the equation here, and the only way you're going to do that is if he gets game action. And Washington will be another good test because even though they may not be you know at their best this year, or the Bruins have had their number this year,
Mhm.
it's going to be a good test. Washington is always a good test. Same thing with Philadelphia. Those two teams in particular always give the Bruins fits, no matter their record or time of the season.
Yeah, I want Olmark to start Thursday. Like I would be starting Olmark, but I feel like it'd be a very Bruins thing to do to go back to Rask and just like have him start again and try and have this start go better. And I just feel like they're gonna put Rask back in on Thursday, and I'm gonna be like, oh man, why can't we just start Olmark?
I am in complete agreement with you. I mean, I want to see Allmark, and this is what I'm. See, this was why I was worried about Tuukka Rask. Kind of coming back a little bit was because the Bruins tend to show favoritism towards him, and
Yeah,
obviously he's been your goaltender for years. Like he's been your starting goalie, but they tend to like I don't know. They just fall in love with Rask, and now I'm worried that Allmark will get overshadowed, and then he'll get into a funk, and then the whole goaltending thing will be a mess. But
yeah,
that's way down the road. I mean,
yeah.
that's way down the road. Uh,
Yeah, I hope the goaltending doesn't become a mess because that's going to be the most important thing as we get late into the season and certainly into the playoffs. Goaltending is the single deciding factor in who's able to make playoff runs and who's out early. And if you don't have your goaltenders playing their best at the right time, you're not going anywhere in the postseason. So I hope that the goaltending doesn't become a mess for the Bruins.
and it's also been one of the only positions on the entire team that's been relatively consistent the entire year. So I hope if the Bruins mess up the goaltending, then we're going to be in for a couple wild weeks down the road here, I think.
Yeah, not in a good way either.
No,
But
not at all.
all right, so I want to get into just kind of talking about the last week of games since we last recorded a show, um, and just kind of go through and talk about each game. So we record on Wednesdays. So the Boston Montreal game was after it was Wednesday night, so it was after we recorded. And this one went about exactly how I hoped that this game would go. Um, just an absolutely dominating performance by the Bruins against a far inferior opponent in Montreal, who's absolutely brutal this season. They're the worst team in the NHL right now. And I don't know. I mean, this was just Boston outshot them 41-25. They won the game 5-1. It was pretty much a complete. It was a completely dominating effort from start to finish, where Boston just completely controlled this game. Marchand had 2 goals in the first period. He finished off the hat trick in the second period with a shorthanded goal. Lazar scored in the first period. Lazar scored again in the third period. He's scoring a bunch of goals all of a sudden, which is great to see.
Yep.
But like I don't know. This was pretty much exactly what I was hoping for going into this game against a team that's as bad as the Canadiens are. And this was one where Boston just completely controlled it all the way through.
Yeah, and it's a type of game where as a coach, you kind of look at the schedule and you don't say this out loud to your team, but you're like, okay, we need to win this one, especially as the schedule gets much tougher, and they took care of business. I was thinking that maybe I was hoping the Bruins would blow them out, which they did, but before the game, when we had recorded this, I said maybe be on the upset watch as Montreal could sneak one,
Yep.
but that was not the case. They took care of business just like they needed to do, and in a year when the standings are tight, like we've talked about, and as the Bruins continue to try to inch their way up and make their playoff push, this was the type of game that they needed to have. And, Marchand and even Pastronok, which we'll get to later, they are, starting to find their rhythm and get really hot at the right time. So that was encouraging to see on Wednesday night because, like it or not, they are the main scorers of this team, even as they get older, which has been incredible to see.
Yeah, so obviously just blowout win over the Canadians. Great to see. Always good when we do that to Montreal. But
Yeah.
this was a game that the Bruins should have won easily and blown them out because Montreal is so bad this season. Then they had to play the next night. Back-to-back games. They had Philadelphia the next night. This was Tuka Rask's first start of the season. Boston outshoots the Flyers 36-27. They score a couple of power play goals. And they're able to squeak out a 3-2 win, although Philadelphia was able to make this interesting. Boston got out to the early 2-goal lead. David Pastronok had a couple of first period goals, one of them just within the first 2 minutes, and then another one not long after, about 5.5 minutes in. Boston goes up 2-0. And at that point, honestly, I thought that we might see another Montreal-esque game where like Boston was just going to dominate it all the way through and blow them out. But that didn't happen. In the second period, Philadelphia came storming back. Cam Atkinson scored a power play goal for the Flyers to get them on the board. Joel Farabee scored 15 minutes into the second period to tie the game at 2. And all of a sudden, Boston's in a game here. After a first period that I thought they were going to just run away with it, they're in a game here. But then Pastrnak finishes off the hat trick late in the second period, puts Boston up 3-2 with a power play goal, and then no scoring in the third period, which is interesting. You don't see that all that often. No scoring in the third period, and the Bruins hang on for the 3-2 win.
Hang on is a good word because they had two back-to-back delay of game penalties for pucks over the glass,
Yep.
and that really put them in a bind, but the Bruins were able to stand tall defensively, and that's what you need to do when you play the Philadelphia Flyers. I thought again the ESPN broadcast was absolutely fantastic. I love the graphics. I like the announcers, and it was good to see some Boston hockey names popped up in this game. Joel Farabee scored a goal for Philadelphia.
Yep.
Cam Atkinson scored a goal, so it's always good to see. We had uh, Boldy last week, I believe it was, on the ESPN telecast, so it's
Yep.
good to see some Boston hockey names getting national recognition on top of a Bruins win.
Yeah, BU and BC represented by Philadelphia there. I mean, I remember watching Cam Atkinson back when he was at Boston College. Farabee, obviously, not that long ago, was at BU. So always good to see the local schools represented, and those guys that played college hockey here get up to the next level in the NHL and have success. But good to see the Bruins hold on to this win. Obviously, it was Rask's first game back. He only gave up a couple of goals. It was a good win, and I would have liked it to be maybe been a little more convincing. But 2 points is 2 points, and that's really all that matters at this point in the season when you're in this, in these positional battles in the standings, trying to get playoff seeding. 2 points is all that matters, and a win is a win, no matter how it comes.
Very rarely against Philadelphia are you going to get a convincing win. No matter how they play or what their record is, they always seem to play the Bruins really tough. So I was very happy that we were able to get the job done against Philadelphia and set the stage for an even tougher game against Nashville.
Yeah, one last thing, David Pastrnak with the hat trick in this game. He has really gotten going since the Christmas break. And we saw Marchand score the hat trick against Montreal. Then the next night, Pasta scores one against Philadelphia. Obviously, great to see both those guys going. Marshy's been going pretty much all year. He's had a phenomenal season. But Pastrnak had a really slow start to the year. And all of a sudden, whatever, I don't know what happened during this Christmas break or whatever, but he has come out as almost like a new player since the turn of the new year. and really has gotten back to being the dominant David Pastronok that we're used to seeing.
A couple of shows ago, we talked about his lack of finishing ability. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he's found it now,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we knew it was only going to be a matter of time, but now he really looks a lot more comfortable, and he's getting back to being that X factor player that we knew he could be, it's it's coming up at the right time. So hopefully he can continue this hot streak as the season progresses.
Yeah, definitely. That will be great to see if he can continue to play this well as the rest of the season goes along, and then certainly, hopefully, in the playoffs, he's able to put up this kind of
Mm,
production.
hmm
But so after Thursday's game, Bruins had Friday off, and then they had Nashville on Saturday afternoon. Very, very good, tough matchup here. High quality opponent. The Predators, one of the best teams in the Western Conference this season. And man, this was a wild game. Boston ends up winning 4-3 in overtime. Another big win, a big 2 points here. They outshot the Predators 44-29, but got dominated in the faceoff circle. Preds won 61% of the faceoffs, and there were, I gotta do quick math, 91 total hits in this game. 46 hits for Nashville and 45 for the Bruins. This was a playoff style hockey game. And, man, I think this was a game that if you want to see what the Bruins are capable of come the postseason and what those playoff style games are going to be like, I think this would be a game to turn to.
Yeah, and it had that gritty Western Conference game type of feel to it. The Bruins statistically struggled in a lot of areas, like you mentioned, the faceoff circle. You almost never see them get dominated to that extent. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, they kind of played a Philadelphia style of hockey. They got pucks to the net, they hung in there, and they just chipped away. And you know, Nashville has been one of the premier teams in the Western Conference for quite some time now, and like you said, are kind of summed up. I think this was a good barometer to see what the Bruins could do against top competition, especially as they aim for the playoffs.
Yeah, and we look at this game. Boston gets out to a 2-0 lead in the first period. Craig Smith scores against his old team. Always great to see that, and you knew that he was probably going to be pretty ramped up for this game because this, I believe, was his first time facing Nashville because they didn't play Nashville last season. So this was Smith's first time playing against the Nashville Predators after spending so many years of his career there. Scores a goal just like 3:20 into the game. So really good start for him. Then Mike Riley scores. Boston goes up 2-0. But Colton Sissons puts one in for Nashville late in the period, and that gets Nashville back into it. It's a 2-1 game at the end of the first. Second period, the only goal belonged to Luke Cunnin, who got his 8th of the season and tied the game up at 2. And then all of a sudden, you're going into the third period with a tied 2-2 game. And, it's all about, who's going to win the third period. Well, turns out nobody won the third period because Brad Marchand scored on the power play early in the third, but Roman Josi was able to answer for Nashville and tie it back up at 3. And then we went to overtime where Taylor Hall was luckily able to finish it off and pick up the win for the Bruins, and they get another big 2 points, extend their winning streak to 5 games. But this was just a hard-fought, playoff-style hockey game against, between two good teams. And at the end of the day, it was very evenly matched, but Boston was able to come out with the 2 points, and Nashville only got 1.
And you look at the third period, both teams scored goals, which may sound simplistic, but I think was very important because it
Mm-hmm.
didn't really give any team any sort of momentum. There wasn't any huge momentum shifts that really kind of favored one team or the other. In that respect, I think that really helped the Bruins because there were certain stretches in this game where Nashville, you almost sensed that they were turning the tide a little bit, but
Yep.
the Bruins were able to stand firm, and that set up Taylor Hall, another guy who's really been kind of finding his way here for the
Yep.
goal in overtime.
Yeah, Hall's another guy. I mean, so many of these Bruins players have really stepped their game up in the new year. And Hall is definitely one of those guys who's been significantly better post Christmas break than he was playing before. And obviously, that is great to see. Also, Derrick Forber finally drops the gloves for the first time. I've been waiting for this
Oh, I saw
because
this
he's a
fight.
big
Yeah.
boy. He's a big boy. I was hoping that he would add some of that physicality, some of that punch to the Bruins lineup. And he hadn't fought yet this season, but he finally dropped the gloves for the first time against Michael McCarron. And it was good to see him get involved that way. He played almost 17 minutes in this game, despite sitting 5 minutes in the penalty box. And I'm just happy to see Forbes get involved physically like that because I've been kind of waiting for it all season long.
Yeah, and watching that fight was like two gladiators because McCarron is no tiny guy either.
No, he's
You know,
huge.
Former may have lost the fight, but I mean, he absolutely gave his best shot. McCarron is absolutely huge, and that's exactly why the Bruins would sign someone like Derek Forber to bring that physicality, to bring that energy. Again, something that we didn't see necessarily over the first half of the regular season, and now we're starting to see the Bruins, I think, generally as a whole, sort of find their roles and play well in them. And
Yeah.
I think as this team clicks more and more, that's going to be even better. And it's good to see them kind of finally figure out where each piece fits. It was almost like before trying to fit, a square into, a circle hole. It wasn't working, but now we're starting to see this team gel to the point where they are finding their roles and they are sort of playing like they're supposed to, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good thing to see and a good thing to figure out for the Bruins at this point in the year as we close in on the halfway point that hopefully they're able to keep this up for the second half of the season and, build their resume and get ready for playoff hockey where, they're going to, no matter who they play, they're going to get a really tough matchup in the playoffs. So they're going to have to be playing their best hockey of the year come postseason time. And hopefully they can build on this over the course of the rest of the season.
and I will say, Craig Smith, 2 points in the last 5 games. That may not seem like a lot, but at the beginning of the year, we didn't really see that spark offensively. Now we're starting to see him get comfortable too. And he was a guy that we thought did really well last season, and he did. And we were hoping he would kind of provide that secondary insurance for Boston in terms of scoring and playmaking. And
Hmm.
and it looks like he's trying to find his groove too. He's starting to find his footing. So I'll be interested to see what he does because if he can kind of get into a little bit of a roll and a little bit of a hot streak, then that will certainly benefit the Bruins down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Smith's a guy that needs to get going, needs to be a contributing secondary scorer for this team. And a guy that the Bruins are going to need, especially come playoff time, to chip in offensively. And he had a really, really slow start to the season. He had an injury early in the year. He missed some time. But he seems to be, again, another one of these guys that's kind of getting better in the new year and starting to contribute quite a bit more, and that's very important and definitely needed for the Bruins.
Absolutely. And when you look at, role players and especially the types of guys that the Bruins signed,
Hmm.
like how they're playing right now is what I think the Bruins envisioned when they signed these guys. I think Thomas Nosek has been playing well as well. I
Yep.
don't remember his statistics off the top of my head, but I heard his name called quite a bit during a couple of the telecasts, and another guy whose name I heard quite a bit on Saturday was Vakanainen,
Yep,
and
Urho
yeah,
Vakanainen.
and I think that he from what I saw, he seems to be involved in the play a lot of the time, and
Hmm.
it's just another example of a guy stepping up to fill a role for the Bruins, and that's what you need as a team if you want to make the playoffs and advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Vakanainen's played well since
Yeah,
being called up. A lot of these depth guys are contributing well for the Bruins and have been a big part of their success in the new year, and especially during this winning streak that Boston was on, where they won 5 in a row. But yeah, big win over Nashville, playoff style game, very good to see. Then the Bruins had a couple of days off, Sunday and Monday. And then, well, they were supposed to have a game Tuesday, but I think they missed the memo that they actually had a game on Tuesday because we got to talk about the Carolina game now. And this was absolutely just brutal. Absolutely brutal from start to finish.
I would have rather watched paint dry, to be honest with you, for this one. Paint drying probably would have been more exciting, but no, this was absolutely brutal. The Bruins looked, outplayed. They were outplayed against a much better team. You were kind of hoping that what we saw on Saturday against a good team like Nashville, that would carry over to another playoff team in Carolina. But I mean, again, it was two ends of the spectrum, and oh boy, I mean, maybe the Bruins forgot to set their alarm clocks before heading into the arena because they were still sleeping on Tuesday.
Yeah, so before the game, we had I want to mention the Willie O'Ree jersey retirement ceremony because
Absolutely.
that was an absolutely fantastic ceremony. Beautiful video piece done. And then he couldn't be there in person because of COVID, but they video chatted him or video recorded him into the arena, and he gave a fantastic speech.
Yeah.
And then number 22 was raised up to the rafters and retired by the Bruins, and it was an absolutely beautiful ceremony, awesome to see. Huge congratulations and tribute, awesome tribute to Willie O'Ree. And I don't know what happened on the ice, but man, Boston must have thought that they were only there for the ceremony and didn't actually have to play a game.
The ceremony was the best part of the game.
It was. The ceremony was easily the best part of the night.
And while on the subject of jersey retirements and ceremonies, I remember Cam Neely's jersey retirement, and the Bruins have always done jersey retirements and ceremonies quite well, and it was great to see Willie O'Ree's number and jersey finally being retired. It's been a long time coming. But yeah, that was really the only highlight of Tuesday night. I mean, the
Yeah.
Bruins were sleeping on the ice, and it was very discouraging to see that, especially like I said, after a good week and a good performance against the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, absolutely. So Boston, I mean, just didn't even show up to this game. Gave up 5 goals in the first period. It was 5-1 after 20 minutes of play. Tuka Rask got pulled after giving up all 5 in the first. There was no scoring in the second period. Carolina added a couple more power play goals in the third and ended up winning this game 7-1. It was just an absolute stinker for the Bruins from start to finish. There was really not one redeeming thing about their on-ice play in this game. It was just one of those games that do happen from time to time where they just got blown out of the building, and it was an absolutely horrible performance, and they're just going to have to, throw that one away, reset, regroup before their next game, and just, try and come out ready to go for the next game. Have a little bit more of a chip on your shoulder, and got to play a lot better than that going forward. I mean, these games happen. We've seen it. Pretty much every team in the league has at least one or two of these nights over the course of a full season, but it's not something to get too worked up about, but at the same time, it was an embarrassing performance, and the Bruins need to do whatever it takes to make sure that this doesn't happen again and that this doesn't carry over into their next few games.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough night, but it also gives them a chance to reset and turn the page and get their focus back. Like you said, every single team, no matter how good they are, is going to have one of these games that's just the ebbs and flows of a season in any sport. I mean, the Patriots, back in the Tom Brady days would have these types of games. We're not going to talk about the Patriots on Saturday, but no, but this Bruins team, I think overall had a good week, but Tuesday was just a rough one, and they're going to have to reset.
Yeah, and obviously it was a awful, pathetic, garbage performance, but it's one game out of 82, and I think that it's important not to overreact to one game. Like, there's no doubt this was brutal, horrible, junk, just like should have never happened. There's no excuse for it. But it happens to almost pretty much every team throughout the season. They're going to have a game or two like this. Um, and I just think the most important thing is that the Bruins kind of reset and get back on track in their next one and make sure that this doesn't become a reoccurring thing and it really is just like a once or twice in a year type thing where it's an outlier and it happens and it just wasn't their night.
And I think as a fan, it's important to look at these types of games and look at their body of work over the last couple of games overall. Like you said,
Yeah.
if this is a reoccurring thing, then it's time to worry. But when you look at the Bruins' body of work over the past week, it was a solid week with the exception of the Carolina game. So this game didn't necessarily worry me because they had a good week. If they had a week full of 7-1 blowout games, then I would be worried. But as far as this one goes, you just have to turn the page and focus on the next game and learn from the mistakes made on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think some of the overreactions are absolutely hilarious to this. Like people losing their minds over one game in an 82 game season. It's like, can we all just take a step back and calm down here? Boston was on a 5-game winning streak going into this game. They've made up quite a few points in the standings over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks. Um, they're in a playoff spot. They're somewhat closing in on the other teams in the Atlantic Division. They've certainly closed the gap that was there over the last few weeks. And it's a bad game. It's one of those things like people saying like that, like the season's over now or that the Bruins are horrible or they're the worst team. It's like, can we all just take a step back and not overreact to one game? Carolina, who leads the NHL in point percentage right now, is arguably the best team in the league and just destroyed you last night. Not even a week ago, had an exact same kind of game. Carolina last Thursday got blown out of their own building 6-0 by the Columbus Blue Jackets, who aren't even a good team. Columbus blew them out of the building on Thursday night of last week. And Carolina's come back with 2 straight wins, including this 7-1 just drubbing of the Bruins on Tuesday night. It's one game out of 82. Carolina's season wasn't over because they lost to Columbus 6-0. Carolina doesn't stink because they lost to Columbus 6-0. They were able to easily bounce back from that and get right back on track. Boston can do the exact same thing. It's one game. All they have to do, they have to go out, win their next one, get back on track, and they'll still be in perfectly fine shape in the division and in the East.
One game is not a big enough sample size to define an entire team or how they're going to do. You have to look at, in terms of sample sizes, trends, home record, road record, what they've done over the past 2 weeks, let's say, or even what they've done over the past week as a smaller scale. But, one game is not going to tell you anything as far as the team's future long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if this was a reoccurring thing, if we were the Arizona Coyotes or the Montreal Canadiens and getting blown out multiple times in a week and, winning single-digit number of games on the season, then yeah, it's a problem. But when you're, pretty securely in a playoff spot, you're 10 games over 500, you're a good hockey team that had been playing really, really well, one game does not define you. It was an awful performance. It was one of those nights. Nothing went right. The team was terrible. They weren't ready to play from the get-go. All you have to do is just move on, reset, and be ready to go for the next time out. And this will be a forgotten blip on the radar in the season looking back if they can just get right back on track this coming week.
And that's the human element of sports right there. Sometimes we think these guys are robots and they are incredible athletes, but there is that human element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just don't have it a particular night. And for the Bruins, that was Tuesday. So as long as they reset and learn from this, then they should be in good shape. I mean, they already look at where they were in comparison to even before the break they had in December. We were
Yep.
kind of iffy on this team and about where they would stand. But after the new year, things have really started to click. So compared to where they were even a month ago,
Yep.
they are in much better shape than where they were.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I am way more optimistic and feeling a lot better about this team now than I was a month ago, and it's not even close. Like
Mm.
they've really gotten me on board with the way that they've played for most of the games this month.
Absolutely. And when you look at, guys like Pasta coming into his own and Marshawn continuing to score, and we talked about this on the first podcast after the new year. Secondary scoring, guys
Yep.
like Taylor Hall, Craig Smith, they have even really started to play well. So I am not discouraged about one difficult loss. I mean, things in the bigger picture of things, they are starting to look up. You're starting to see all the pieces fall into place, and a machine is not going to work 100% every single day. And when you look at what they've been able to do overall here, I am very encouraged about where they are right now compared to where they were because things
Yep.
are really starting. We're starting to see progress, I guess, is the shorter version of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Pro-
definitely.
Progress and continuity.
Yep, definitely. So, as long as Boston's able to bounce back from this, and they don't, they don't let this weigh on them and carry through these next few games. If they can get right back in the win column and start playing good hockey again, this is it's going to be forgotten by the end of the year, I think. And just is what it is. It was one of those nights, but they got to learn from it, bounce back, and move forward and be ready to go on Thursday because we'll get into the upcoming schedule now for the Bruins. We're recording this on Wednesday. By the time you guys see it on Friday, this Thursday night game will have happened, but they've got the Washington Capitals on Thursday night, 7 o'clock game. And again, this is going to be an interesting one because you're going to have two very, I think, determined, intense teams in this game. Because if you're looking at this from the Bruins' perspective, they're coming off their worst loss of the season. Just got absolutely destroyed on their home ice by Carolina. 7-1 game. They're obviously going to have a big time chip on their shoulder after that. They're going to want to come back and really bring a whole new effort in this next game. But if you're looking at this from the Capitals' perspective, Boston blew the Capitals out in their home building last week. Go back to last Monday. The Capitals lost 7-3 to the Bruins on their home ice back on January 10th, and you know that the Washington's going to have that same chip on their shoulder. They're going to want to avenge that loss. They're going to come out with a heavy game, a high effort type of game, and really want to get the Bruins back for what they did back in Washington a couple weeks ago. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game on Thursday night when you get two angry teams that want revenge going at it. And I think it's going to be really intense playoff style hockey.
It always is between these two teams, right? And depending on who starts in net, whether it be Rask or Allmark, if it's Rask, I would think he would want to, take this game a little extra seriously too,
Yep,
given what happened on Tuesday. So it's
definitely.
going to be very interesting. There's a lot of storylines coming into this game for both teams, and I think that should make for a very good hockey game, without a doubt.
Yeah, I agree too. This Thursday night game is going to be really interesting to see how this goes, see how both of these teams look. And again, I think you're going to have two angry teams with big chips on their shoulder because of the recent blowout losses. When they play each other, it's going to be a hard fought battle from start to finish for sure.
Yeah, and I can't wait to watch it. I think it's going to be. These are the types of games that you look to see how a team responds after blowout losses. In the Bruins' case, it was Tuesday. In Washington's case, it was the last time these two teams met. So I'm
Yep.
expecting I'm expecting a low-scoring hockey game, but I'm expecting playoff physicality type of hockey, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to feel like a playoff game in January, as many of these games have over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. After Thursday, Boston's next game, also still at home. They are on a long, long homestand
They
here.
are.
Winnipeg, Thursday or Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Uh, Interesting start time here. You don't see many 3 p.m. start times in the NHL. That's a little weird. Usually it would be at 1, or maybe at 4 if you wanted to do like a late afternoon game. But 3 is definitely an interesting start time. But nonetheless, the Winnipeg Jets come to town. Winnipeg has had a very interesting season. They have not been nearly as good as I thought they were going to be. They've been extremely inconsistent. I would say Winnipeg's season has been very similar to the Bruins, except slightly worse. And they didn't figure it out in the new year the way that the Bruins have. Like Winnipeg hasn't had this,
Mm.
that long stretch of where they've gotten their game on track. Like they've just been extremely inconsistent all season long, like the Bruins were back at the beginning of the year. Just unfortunately for the Jets, that's never fixed itself, and they've been that way all season. It's going to be an interesting game. I don't know exactly, which Winnipeg Jets team is going to show up, because if we have to play a good Winnipeg Jets team that, when they're playing at their best, they're a very difficult opponent and a very good hockey team. But if the lousy Winnipeg Jets show up, all of a sudden, this should be a game that Boston should win and be able to take care of business, especially on home ice. So that's going to be an interesting one Saturday afternoon.
It's also going to be interesting for a couple of reasons. For one, they lost to the Washington Capitals in overtime in their last game, and they've also had a lot of postponements over the past couple of
Oh, yeah.
weeks. So, it's really probably been, as a Jets player, I would kind of honestly be a little thrown off of my rhythm here because it's been a very uneven schedule due to no fault of their own. But I'm going to be interested to see, can they find their form? Hopefully not against the Bruins, but are they going to be a team that, you know, finds that groove? Because as it has been for basically the entire NHL, each
Hmm.
team has had to go through something this year, and right now Winnipeg is going through postponements, and we'll have to see, which team shows up.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing with Winnipeg and the way that they've been this year is it's a big question of which team shows up, the good Jets or the bad Jets. And that really kind of determines, what kind of game it is and how close of a game it will be.
Sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it?
It sounds like the Bruins for the
Yeah.
first part of the season, very much so. I think they're very similar in that respect. The only difference is that Boston's gone on this big run in the new year that Winnipeg hasn't been able to find yet and go on. So they're slightly worse than the Bruins, but I still think if the good Jets show up, they can really give the Bees a run for their money.
Yeah, again, I think this is going to be a good game to watch. I mean,
Yep.
there are no slouches for the Bruins, really. I mean, even with the Canadians, you would never know. It's a rivalry game, so you can
Yep.
never predict anything. This is a really interesting part of the schedule for the Bruins, and I think the Winnipeg Jets will be fascinating just because of all the factors we just talked about.
Yeah, so after the Winnipeg game, Boston plays again on Monday, the 24th. 7 p.m. home game against the Anaheim Ducks. Another really interesting matchup here because Anaheim has been one of the biggest surprises in the league this season. Almost everybody had them as a last place team going into this year, and they're in a playoff spot. And they've had an absolutely phenomenal year compared to what the expectations were. However, recently has been really bad for the Ducks. They're just 2-6-2 in their last 10 games. They've lost 3 in a row in regulation. They are really, really struggling right now in Anaheim. They've played 41 games on the year as well, so they've got as many games played as anybody else in the league. They're already halfway through their season. Most other teams have games in hand on them, and it's going to be interesting because, again, Anaheim has had such a good season overall. compared to what they were expected to be,
Mm.
but are really, really struggling right now. And I feel like this is a game that Boston needs to take advantage of the fact that they're catching Anaheim in what's been their worst stretch of the season, and they need to make sure that they pick up a win here.
Yeah, sometimes you see teams start off really hot and then kind of hit that wall.
Yep.
Anaheim seems to be hitting that wall right now, and the Bruins, this would be a good opportunity for them to kind of take advantage of that. Like you said, I'll be interested to watch Anaheim. They have a lot of young talent. They have a bright future, and they've already, honestly, for me, surpassed expectations of
Oh,
what they were
yeah.
going to do for this year. So I'll be
Absolutely.
interested to see. Because again, the Ducks have been hot and cold. So if the Bruins can catch them while they're in the middle of this cold streak, then I think that would bode well for the team down the road here.
Yeah, definitely. And again, Anaheim's already, I mean, surpassed my expectations. I thought they were going to finish with maybe even less than 30 wins this season. They already have 19, and they've still got half a season to go. So Anaheim's already had a significantly better year than I thought they were. But Boston happens to be catching them at a pretty good time right now, where they should be able to pick up a win here and take advantage of the fact that they are having a really rough stretch right now. But after the Anaheim game, that finally concludes this huge homestand for the Bruins, where they literally played 7 straight on home ice. And they go on the road Wednesday night at Colorado. I mean, talk about
Yikes.
a tough way to start a road trip. They go at Colorado. It's their first road game in like 2.5 weeks, and they have to go to Denver and face a team that is 8-1-1 in their last 10 games, have won 3 straight, is absolutely unbeatable on their home ice. Colorado is 16-2-1 on home ice this year.
No big deal, right? Just going to
Yeah.
Colorado and
I'm going to
beat
mark
the
this one
Avalanche.
down as a likely loss for the Bruins.
There might be an avalanche on the Bruins' heads by the end of this game, and I wouldn't be surprised. Colorado again is a very fascinating team to watch. I like this little stretch of games here, and even this homestand because it's given me a chance to see some of the Western Conference teams.
Yep.
And Colorado, I mean, what can you say about them? Cale Makar, he's a guy. Again, I'll plug any Boston or New England hockey reference any chance I can get. Cale Makar, a guy that we both grew up watching playing for UMass, and
Yep.
he's become one of the best players in the entire National Hockey League. So,
Yep.
and usually teams have one or two star players that can help them. Colorado, it seems like their entire lineup is just absolute stars everywhere you look. So I will probably chalk this one up as a loss for the Bruins just because that's the cream of the crop that they're facing right there. In the first game back on the road, that almost seems unfair.
Yeah, no, Colorado's once again absolutely filthy, one of the best teams in the league. They're leading the Central Division, they're leading the Western Conference. You could make the argument that they're the best team in the league. And they got off to kind of a slow start, but after those first couple months, they've just absolutely ripped it since. And Colorado is back to being an elite team in the NHL. And it's going to be a very difficult matchup for the Bruins. Again, I don't expect Boston to win this game, but if they do, that would certainly be a statement win if they were able to pick up a win here.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm just looking for the Bruins to be able to keep this close. I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds kind of pathetic to say, but this is a game where the Bruins are, I think, quite overmatched in this case. And
Yeah.
it's one of the ones that, well, we kind of talked about this. Take advantage of the games that you can before you have to face a team like Colorado, because I think the Bruins could be in line for another 7-1 loss when they have to go out to Colorado.
All right, so next 4 games: Capitals, Jets, Ducks, and Avalanche. 8 possible points. What will make you happy as a Bruins fan here? How many of these next 8 possible points do you want them to pick up?
Ooh, that's tough. What did we say last week? One, and one was our prediction
Yeah,
with
we were
six
happy
points.
with 1-1-1 last week, and what'd they end up doing?
Let's see.
Oh, they did way better than that. They
Yeah,
did. The only loss was Carolina, but they won the other two, so they went 2-0. They went 2-0-1 through those 3 games.
so out of a possible 6 points for this next week, I would honestly,
Well, 8 for
well,
this next
yes,
week.
yeah, 8 points for this next week. Sorry about that. I would go 6 again. I mean, I think this is the point in the season where they really need to continue to play solid hockey. I think the Avalanche is really the only game that they are outmatched in this
Mm-hmm.
case, and the other teams, I will say, are even. You talk about the Winnipeg Jets, and they're kind of like the Bruins, like we talked about, kind of up and down. I think that will present a good challenge for the Bruins, but I think the Bruins can pull it out. Washington, they're going to be looking for revenge. I think the Bruins can squeak by again, but I don't think it will be easy. Anaheim, we're catching them on a little bit of a rough patch of their own right now, and so I think the only really big game that I don't see the Bruins winning is Colorado, and I think you probably would agree. I mean,
Yeah, I'll be happy with 5 points. 2-1-1 is fine with me. I'm expecting a loss against Colorado. I think they need to win 2 out of the other 3 games. If I don't care which two, but if they can win 2 out of the other 3 games, I'll be happy with that. And that would leave Boston. That would get Boston 5 out of a possible 8 points, more than half. And that would definitely, help them continue to stay where they are in the standings and secure what's hopefully playoff positioning come the end of the year. But it's definitely not going to be an easy stretch. Again, I
no.
think the Capitals are going to be a tougher matchup than they were the last time we played them. I think Winnipeg is totally going to depend on which Winnipeg team shows up. Anaheim is a good team that we happen to be catching at a good time for a win, so that one I'm kind of expecting the Bruins to win. And then Colorado, I'm expecting a loss there just because the Avs are on fire and almost unbeatable at home. So I just don't see Boston going into Colorado and beating a team that's won 16 out of 19 games on home ice.
I don't see that either. That would be quite a win if they did, but I don't see that happening. And then when you look at overall, when you look at how the Bruins have done, we kind of previewed this month a couple of shows ago,
Yeah.
and we said it was going to be a difficult month. If the Bruins can just finish strong here, I think that would say a lot about the team moving forward because I think they've done okay this month, all things considered.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's been a very good month for the Bruins overall, and we're just going to see if they can continue that and end up closing it out strong. They do have a couple more games after the Colorado one to close out January, but they're 2 very winnable games that we'll be talking about next episode when we come back again next week. But yeah, so it's been a strong month overall. Boston's just got to keep that going. They've got some tough games this coming week. It's funny because I think schedule-wise, it's been a very difficult month. They've played a lot of good teams. They're playing their best hockey, and they're able to pick up a lot of wins against good teams, and it's turned out to be a very, very good month for the Bruins. And we'll have to see how this coming week goes, but hopefully they can continue that.
Which is why I'm also not worried about Tuesday night's loss to Carolina because they've been able to have quality games against good teams. And when you
Yeah.
face this many good teams over a month span, you're going to have a rough game. So overall, I think the Bruins have done a good job of, not playing down to the teams that they should beat and playing at a respectable level against opponents that are a little bit tougher. They haven't really had a major fault to where I'd say, "Oh no, I'm completely worried." So I think there's something to be said for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So we'll see how the Bruins do here this coming week, but if they keep playing the way that they have for most of January, they're going to be fine. If they play like they did against Carolina, we might be in a little bit of trouble, but I don't think that's going to carry over. I think we're going to see a refocused and reset Bruins team for these next few games, and they're going to get their season back on track. But Danny, thank you so much again for coming on. You're basically the co-host now, and it was, again, always awesome to talk hockey with you, dude, and really, really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. It's always a lot more fun when they win, right?
Definitely,
I'll see
definitely.
you soon.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, this is going to do it for episode 51 of Black and Gold Weekly, weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube, part of the Black and Gold production, presented by Black and Gold Productions. And I want to give a big shout out to Mark Allred and everybody at BNG Productions. This show would not be happening without them. So thank you to Mark and everybody there for all the support. Please make sure you go to www.blackandgoldhockey.com to check out all of the great BNG work that everybody is doing. Articles coming out each and every day, podcast network, a lot of great Bruins content at blackandgoldhockey.com. So please be sure to check that out. Also, the link's down in the description of the video. Again, if you're in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any other team, or NCAA college apparel, it's all down there in the description. Just click one of those 3 links and you can get some great products available. All different kinds of stuff, all team branded. So it'd be awesome if you guys could check that out as well. But that's going to do it here for episode 51. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and we'll be back next week with episode 52, and we'll have a whole new Bruins week of action to talk about. That's going to do it for this one. Have a great week, guys. Have a great weekend, and talk to you guys soon, and go Bruins.